It is so essential for us to have fat in our diet because that is the main fuel that actually is required for metabolism. And if you're a woman, you know that you have a higher percent body fat as compared to men simply because of your menstrual cycle. Whether you are still menstruating or you are in menopause, you still need a higher percentage of body fat in order to keep certain hormones regulated. Let's first start off maybe by talking about what is metabolism. Okay, let's get an understanding of what metabolism is. Metabolism is your ability to burn a certain amount of calories at rest. It is the ability for you to be able to be efficient with the energy that you have and not have that need to store it. So you have a high metabolism when at rest, so that's your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR as you may have heard it, is higher. So while you're at rest, doing nothing, lying down, absolutely doing nothing except breathing and just taking care of the basic bodily functions, you're using a lot of energy to do that. Your body does not have that need to slow things down, and it does all those functions for you using a higher amount of energy in the form of calories. And calorie is just a measure of a unit of energy. We talked about this the first day, and the way that generally it's measured is through combustion. So they put, let's say, food in a small closed off container or chamber, and then they measure the kilojoules, or the energy that's given off of it, as the product of combustion. Now, a slow metabolic rate or slow metabolism means that at rest, you use less energy to do that same amount of work as that person who's using more energy to do it. And so if you take two people, one has a high metabolism and one has a slow metabolism, and the body is using energy to breathe, to digest, to keep it warm, to create hormones, to grow hair, to be able to do all those basic functions, the person with the higher metabolism uses more energy to do that, and the person with the lower metabolism uses less energy to do so. And so when we slow down our metabolism, we slow down all of these functions in the body. And when you have a slow metabolism, a sign of that is you may be cold all the time. You may feel like you don't want to move a lot. You may feel like you want to sit often. And the reason for that is because, again, your body has put you in this place where it requires a very small amount of energy to do things. It feels that it doesn't have these energy reserves, and therefore it forces you to slow down, to stay still, and to do less. Because again, this ends up being a survival mechanism. And so the body believes that what it's doing for you is going to help ensure your survival. But what actually happens is we end up storing more, we end up utilizing less for the exact same functions as that person next to us who's got that higher metabolism. And again, you can look this up online. There's a lot of different definitions, but I want to give you the definition that is going to be the most tangible and that's going to resonate with you the most, and that's also going to help support all the conversations that we've been having. And before we move on and talk about metabolism, we also have to talk about the two main fuel sources of the body. And so the two main fuel sources of the body is sugar and fat. We use either sugar or we use fat. Fat is a slow burner. Fat is so essential for our survival. It helps lubricate all tissue. It helps nerve conductivity. It helps create many hormones. There are many fat-soluble vitamins as well. It helps create hair and nails. And so it is so essential for us to have fat in our diet because that is the main fuel that actually is required for metabolism. And if you're a woman, you know that you have a higher percent body fat as compared to men simply because of your menstrual cycle. Whether you are still menstruating or you are in menopause, you still need a higher percentage of body fat in order to keep certain hormones regulated. And then there's sugar burner. So sugar is also a quicker fuel. Sugar gives the body that quick energy. And remember, yesterday we spoke about cortisol, and we spoke about how cortisol controls blood glucose. And so cortisol makes sure that there's always sugar available in the blood somehow. Why? Because just in case it suddenly needs quick access to energy, it's going to be there for it in the muscle tissue and circulating in the blood. And so sugar and fat are our two main fuel sources. Sugar is a fast, quick access burn, and then, sugar is a quick, fast access burn, and then fat is that slow burner, that it takes much longer to burn fat because it requires oxygen. So sugar can be available right away without oxygen. That process is called anaerobic. When it doesn't require oxygen, there's immediate sugar available. And then when it needs to start to break down that glycogen that we spoke about yesterday, so that hard packed form of glucose that's in the liver and in the muscle, then it starts to require oxygen, and then it can start to provide that to the body in about 7 minutes or so. Okay? Again, we're not going to geek out too much. I just want to give you a very, very basic layout of what that's going to look like. And then the final thing I want to say is that most of the time, we are either a fat burner or a sugar burner. So we're predominantly a fat burner or a sugar burner. However, we were designed to be metabolically flexible. We were designed to be able to use sugar when it's available, but also be able to rely on fat when the sugar wasn't available. Because let's go ahead and rewind a few thousand years together. When, let's say, again, we were in tribes, we lived in tents. During the summertime, we would see a lot of fruit growing on trees. And so we would have instant food available for us. There was plants that we could eat, and that was the carbohydrates or the sugar that was available for us. But then come winter time, if we didn't actually keep any foods on reserves, if we didn't have grains in storage, if we didn't have any food in storage, we would have to rely on stored body fat for energy to be able to make it through the winter. And you see a lot of animals also hibernating and doing the exact same thing. So in the summertime, that's when they feed. There's a lot of sugar available. Everything excess is stored into fat. And then while they hibernate, they bring up that fat to be able to use as energy. So we're metabolically flexible. We were designed to be this way. And whether we go down the path of using sugar as the primary burner or fat as the primary burner, we require different hormones and different enzymes to do that. And so there's this one main rule that the body has, and we're going to talk about this a little bit today. If you don't use it, you lose it. Okay? If you don't use it, you lose it. So if I have been designed to be metabolically flexible, yet what I've done my whole life is only focus on being a sugar burner, only support my body's ability to be a sugar burner, but never supported my body's ability to be a fat burner, well, my body's going to stop producing the hormones and the enzymes that are required to be able to facilitate that fat release from fat cells and to be able to use it as energy. And it takes a small amount of time to adapt. And if you've ever done the ketogenic diet, that's what they say to you. They say it takes a while for you to go into ketosis, right? Because it takes a while for genes to be expressed to start producing those hormones for you to be able to oxidize that fat, all right? So kind of the same concept. And so I think it's come up now 2 or 3 times so far that we've been told that we should eat every 2 to 3 hours so that we don't lose muscle mass and so that we keep the metabolism up, right? But if I'm always getting my body to eat every time it needs energy, then am I supporting being a sugar burner or a fat burner? Yeah, well, I'm going to assume you all said sugar burner. Because if my body's relying on ingesting food every 2 to 3 hours, it doesn't need to call upon any stores. It knows that it's going to get food in a couple hours. I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to want food. I'm going to condition my body to need to eat every 2 to 3 hours to get the energy it needs. And so that's what we were saying yesterday. It's almost like the body is blind to the fact that it has all this stored energy available for it in the form of fat. And so you're either a fat burner or you're a sugar burner, depending on how you've conditioned your body. And again, I'm going to say this just for clarity. We are designed to be metabolically flexible. We're designed to be both fat burners and sugar burners. And unfortunately, the way that we have set up eating in our society, the way that there is food that is very fast and available to us at all times, the way that we are told that when we're hungry, we should grab a Snickers bar, the way that we've been constantly bombarded with all of these snack foods all the time, very cheap and very available for us, we have conditioned ourselves to become sugar burners. And now bring in diet culture, the bodybuilding world, who's told us we're supposed to be eating every few hours and make sure we never go hungry and make sure that you eat before you go hungry. And it's pretty interesting because we have this phobia of ever being hungry, right? But what would you think happens if you actually allowed your body to be hungry for a moment? Yeah, it would look for other sources of fuel, and generally in the form of fat. You would actually adapt it to start to look for fuel in the form of fat. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, because what I'm also saying is that the goal is not to restrict calories, okay? But what I am saying is, on a very hormonal level, we have sets of hormones and enzymes that are responsible for either oxidizing fat or oxidizing sugar, that either promote you becoming and being a fat burner or a sugar burner. So before, again, we move on to metabolism, let's pick up what signs are generally available when we're either a fat burner or a sugar burner. So you know you're a fat burner when you don't need to snack often. Okay, you notice you have a nice portion size meal, you feel very satisfied, and you're able to sustain that for hours. So you have a nice breakfast that's complete and balanced in all the ways, creates a lot of satiety for you, and you feel very stable up until lunchtime, for example. Okay, you have very stable energy, and even your sleep is nice and relaxed and rested. You get restful sleep. And you know you're a fat burner when you don't get hangry. So you may have noticed or experienced that, and that used to be me. I shared that yesterday. Oh my goodness, nobody could be around me when I was hangry. I was awful to be around. I couldn't even stand myself when I was hungry. And so you don't get hangry. You've got very, very stable energy. When you're hungry, you start to feel the signs in your stomach, but you don't get all irritable. You don't get cranky. You don't get mad. You don't get hot and angry, okay? And you can go for long periods of time without food. So if for whatever reason you had a big project in the afternoon and you just get busy with the things that you're doing and you don't need to have food. You can even go for a hike for hours without needing food, and you'll be okay. You could actually sustain that, and then after your hike, you're ready for your nice big meal. You can also exercise without needing to eat first. So if you feel like you wake up in the morning, you're super hungry, you want to go to the gym, but you still need to eat, and you need to have your bowl of oats or you need to have your carbohydrates to fuel that, that's a sign that you're not a fat burner. That's a sign that you're more of a sugar burner. And you also realize that it's pretty easy for you to release fat. So when you start to do your exercise, when you start to maybe do a couple modifications around your diet or around your nutrition, you notice that your body releases that stored energy really easily. And your mood is stable. Okay, you don't have these spikes of anxiety and fear and doubt. You've actually got a very, very stable mood. And if you do have intense feelings, they last for a short amount of time. They're not these long, drawn out emotions. So generally these long, drawn out emotions last for days. They could last for longer than, let's say, 5, 15, 20 minutes. It's something that really almost takes over your day. Whereas when you are a fat burner, you have these short kind of tempered emotions. So they just hang out for a few minutes and then they pass. And on the other hand, you know you're a sugar burner when, like I was sharing earlier, your friends are afraid of you when you're hungry, right? Your spouse leaves the room. Everyone's afraid to talk to you and just afraid to be around you. They just kind of throw you some food and run away. You notice also you crave sweets a lot. You have a sugar tooth. You're always craving something sweet. And you notice you're hungry often. You snack often. Every couple hours, you're nibbling on something. You're mindlessly eating. You always have a little something that you're eating. While you're cooking, you're eating something. While you're studying, you're eating something. While you're watching TV, you're eating something. You're constantly busying yourself with little snacks. And you notice you also usually need a dessert after a meal. After you have a meal, then you have a little sweet tooth. You're always looking for something sweet to have. Even if it's a fruit, you're always still craving something sweet after your meal. You notice you also snack before bed. So dinner is not your final meal. Usually you continue to snack up until that point that you go to bed. And you notice that you tend to crash in the middle of the afternoon. So you tend to get really, really tired in the middle of the afternoon. You may even need a nap. You feel like you need something sweet to eat. You feel like you need a little sweet snack, sometimes even a coffee. You need that pick-me-up in the middle of the afternoon. Okay, you notice that bunk in energy. And you notice that you have low energy until you eat. So you see and feel those peaks of energy. You have low energy when you're hungry, then as soon as you eat, you feel that burst of energy, and then boom, you crash again, you feel that low energy. You notice that your body is stubborn to release weight. So again, over time and diet after diet, you notice that the things that used to work aren't working so much anymore. That it takes way more effort and you have way more cravings, and especially for sweet things or very, very simple carbohydrates like chips or popcorn. And when you're hungry, you get the shakes. You get lightheaded. Again, you get cranky, you get irritable. So there's a lot that goes on in the body when you are hungry. And again, even though you're struggling with weight, or you know that, for example, you have excess body weight that's available to be used for energy, you still are experiencing hunger often and you're needing to snack often. And so when you go on a diet or you try to change your food, you're constantly fighting against that snacking, you're fighting against those cravings, and you're also fighting against that constant need to eat. And so let's come back now to our conversation about metabolism. Okay, now that we understand that you can either be dominantly a sugar burner or dominantly a fat burner, and you become a fat burner when you fat adapted. If you are constantly in protection mode while you're trying to shift your metabolism, your body's going to keep resisting you. And what this means is it's going to be really hard to fight those cravings. It's going to take a whole lot of willpower to fight those cravings. And you're always going to be fighting against cortisol, which just wants you to eat more and to move less, and will slow down your metabolism and favor fat storage. And so your first big tool, if you really want to increase your metabolism, is to work on the nervous system. After that, there's little tricks and things that we share with you around nutrition, around even structuring your nutrition. So it's not about eat this, don't eat that. It's more about how to eat and when to eat. And that becomes really, really powerful. And not in a way that's restrictive, in a way that becomes very, very logical, and more importantly, very satisfying. Because I don't know about you, but I'm a foodie, and food is a really, really big part of my life. And if you were to tell me that I had to count things and weigh things out to be able to eat and to be able to make the right choices, that already starts to give me so much stress and anxiety. And so it is actually a very, very simple way that we do that, and it matches you. And so it's not going to be a one size fits all. There's a lot of different tools that we apply, and let's see which one is a match for you to be able to shift that metabolism. But regardless of where you're starting, it's going to start with the nervous system, period. Okay? And so what slows down a metabolism? Well, first and foremost, cycles of crash dieting. Okay? All of a sudden changing your food drastically, reducing your calories overnight, or removing an entire food group like carbohydrates or fats or even meat, for example. That is very, very harsh on the metabolism, because remember that after 72 hours, that's when your body starts to see it as a threat. So for the first 72 hours of major change, your body doesn't necessarily adapt to that. But once that goes a little bit longer, so after 72 hours, your body now starts to, oh my God, what's going on? All right, this is not going good. Like, we got to do something about this. We got to slow things down. We're going into a famine, okay? And then it starts to put the brakes on. You trigger protection mode, because cycles of crash dieting and calorie restriction are seen to the body as a major form of trauma. And that trauma is food scarcity. Anytime you restrict calories or you change your food drastically, removing entire things, especially things that you desired, that your body wants, but you're not allowing yourself to have, you're denying yourself that desire, after 72 hours, your body puts the brakes on, protection mode is triggered, and your metabolism will slow down, period. Okay? And the reason, of course, on a very biological level, is that your body's just trying to ensure your survival. It loves you. It just wants to make sure that nothing bad's going to happen to you. It's just trying to protect you. But of course, it doesn't give us that outcome that we desire, especially if our goal is to release weight or transform our body, or maybe to drop a size or two. Okay? And the other thing that happens is loss of lean body mass when you calorie restrict or you crash diet. And that in itself slows down metabolism, because it's actually, lean body mass, by the way, is muscle tissue. It's actually where we burn all of our calories. We burn our calories in our muscle tissue. And the more muscle mass we have, the more calories we can burn at rest. And so this oftentimes is a very scary conversation for a lot of women, because I've worked with women for 25 years, and one of their big fears around lifting weights or strength training is bulking up and getting jacked and looking masculine. Okay, not for all women, but for a lot of women. And so I'll tell you that it is impossible. It is impossible. First of all, it won't happen overnight. So you can see your progress and then start to adjust your training accurately. And then the other thing too is we don't have the hormones that support that type of muscle growth unless you're injecting something from the outside. But we don't create that level of testosterone, and we don't create that level of growth hormone that's required to be able to really bulk up so quickly like, let's say, a masculine can. And so this is oftentimes something that stops or inhibits a lot of women from strength training, but it's very, very powerful because the more muscle mass we have, the more calories that we can burn at rest. But every time we restrict calories, every time we crash diet, every time we remove an entire food group from our diet after 72 hours, the body starts to see a famine. And so it needs energy. And if, for example, you were consuming 2,000 calories, but then decided to drop it down to 900, well, your body needs to make up for that lost calories. So what does it do? It starts to look at what is available in my body to start to use. And so, yeah, maybe it will use a little bit of fat, but mostly it's going to use muscle tissue because that's the easiest tissue to give up. It's very, very easy to convert muscle tissue to glucose, to energy that it can use right away. It's a much faster process than converting fat. Remember, fat is a slow burner, converting fat into the type of fuel that it needs. And so that's why after you do a diet and you see that you've dropped a lot of weight quickly, and by the way, that is one of the biggest red flags. If you've had rapid weight loss, that is a great indicator that you've lost muscle. And if you've lost muscle, then you've slowed down your metabolism. You now have less of that machinery to burn calories at rest for you. That's what's happened. So any rapid weight loss that happened usually when we go on a ketogenic diet or go on these extreme diets, low calorie diets, if that's happened so quickly in a week, most likely you've lost a lot of muscle mass. And so it's super exciting when you step on the scale. Usually that's your only form of measure. You step on the scale, you see that the weight went down, and so you think that you've released that weight that you wanted. But you did release weight. You did. You just didn't release body fat, and that's very different. The scale tells you what your weight is and what weight you lost, but it's not specific around what you've lost. And so you just see that overall number that feels very, very exciting. Now you can start having pizza and donuts and go back to the old things that we used to do. And then all of a sudden, the weight's coming back quicker than ever and more than ever. Now I weigh even more than when I went into this diet. And that's because every single cycle of dieting, you lose some body mass. You lose some lean body mass. And that slows down your metabolism. At the age of 25 years old. So remember, I'm going to remind you again about that big rule of the body, okay? If you don't use it, you lose it. At the age of 25, if women stop using their lean body mass, meaning they stop doing resistance training, then they lose 1% of muscle mass each year. And the same thing happens for men at the age of 29. At the age of 29, if they don't do resistance training, if they stop using their body in that same physical way that they did when they were younger, they lose 1% of their lean body mass every year. And two reasons for that. Number one, we produce less growth hormone. So for women at 25, we produce less growth hormone to support that muscle mass. And for men at 29, that's the same thing that's happening. They produce less growth hormone. But then the second thing that happens is really more lifestyle. If you think about it, at 25 or at 29, you're not out partying, you're not walking to school anymore, you're not schlepping your books, you're not doing all these things. You now have a very different lifestyle. So you're probably sitting more often. You're probably driving the kids everywhere. You're probably sitting in an office. So the lifestyle has changed, and you're no longer using your body in the way that you did when you were younger, right? When we were kids, we played all the time. We used our bodies so physically. Well, I don't know about nowadays, but I did. We didn't have the internet or any of these games and things like that when we were younger. But we tend to not see that as much anymore. Not just in our kids, but also that's the age, 25 and 29. That's what happens. And so if you think about it, 1% every year. So by the time I'm 50, holy smokes, I've lost 25% of my lean body mass. I haven't exercised, I haven't lifted weights, I haven't done any of these things. No wonder. My metabolism has been slowing down year by year by year by year. And by the time I'm 50, now I really start to see the effect, right? It's like the accumulation over time. And so this is happening, but the good news about it is that it's completely reversible. And I see it all the time. No matter what age you are, even if you're in your 70s or your 80s, you can still build lean body mass and speed up your metabolism. Okay? So just know that we tend to blame it on age and on estrogen, but that's not the case. The case is that our machinery that burns all the calories for us, we've depleted over time through, number one, inactivity and not using it in the same way. And then number two, cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle of crash dieting and major restriction. And now we're struggling. Okay? So the way out is not going to be through more restricting and then eating carrots all day. The way out is going to be through making sure you focus on lean body mass and you stop that caloric restriction. Okay? Your body's going to constantly sense that food scarcity constantly. When you're always thinking about food, you're always worried about food, you're always restricting food. The thought of food and weight and body image makes your environment so stressful. Okay? Now, I mentioned inactivity earlier. So inactivity, that's just being sedentary. Like I said, usually at the age of 25, that's when we start to become adults and we grow up and we got to take care of kids and pay the mortgage and do all these things. And so we tend to also become more inactive, just getting really busy with the other things of life. Okay? What else slows down metabolism? Liquid meals, right? You're giving your body absolutely no work to do. So every time you have a smoothie, every time you have a shake, every time you juice, your body's like, okay, boop, absorb, right? There's something called the thermogenic effect of feeding. That means it takes calories to burn your food. I think somebody said this earlier. If you eat every 2 to 3 hours, it increases your metabolism, right? A little tiny bit of truth to that if your food is more complex. But most of the time when we diet, we're having shakes or we're juicing, we're doing a juice cleanse or a fast. And just notice, it's sure, again, at the end of that juice fast, I've tried them in the past and they were the most miserable things I've ever done. But at the end of that juice fast, sure, you drop some weight. Most likely, again, you drop muscle, but then all of a sudden you start eating normally. That comes back on in like 2 days. You've been starving yourself for like 10 days and then all of a sudden in 2 days, it's all back. And then slowly start to see it go up and up and up and up over time. Now, obviously, protection mode, cortisol slows down metabolism. That is the function of cortisol. It's going to do that all the time. If you're chronically stuck in protection mode because of unresolved trauma, you still have things that have happened in the past that are still showing up every day in your day-to-day life. That is unresolved trauma, and that's constantly keeping you in protection mode. Maybe you are in a very difficult relationship. Maybe you've had a major life event happen that you never fully got to address. Maybe you have dysregulated emotions. Maybe you were taught to handle emotions a certain way as a child and that didn't serve you and you're having a hard time sitting in them now as an adult. Maybe sadness was not something that was acceptable. I remember growing up, my background's Egyptian, it wasn't okay to cry. If we cried, it was like, suck it up. What are you crying for? Like, be tough, stop crying, right? And I used to hear this all the time with my brothers. You're a man, don't cry. Men don't cry, right? And they were 4, right? So that is how we develop dysregulated emotions. And we never learn how to make it okay to cry, make it okay to be stressed, make it okay to have fear, make it okay to be anxious for a moment, right? Make it okay to be sad. So all of these emotions that we have a hard time managing, that we tend to escape through food or other modalities. We spoke a little bit about alcohol and cannabis the other day, but that is a dysregulated emotion. And then, of course, we have a slow metabolism when we are a sugar burner, when we've conditioned our body to eat every few hours, when what we eat is very simple food, a lot of high glycemic foods, very, very easily available. We've learned every time we're tired, we just get to pick me up with something to eat, something sweet, and then we feel the crash, and then that's it. That's like our day, cycle up and down through bouts of energy and bouts of sugar. And gut inflammation, which we'll talk a lot more about tomorrow, also slows down metabolism. We're going to talk about dysbiosis. We're going to talk about what happens when you have inflammation in the gut. And this is one of my most favorite topics to talk about because this is oftentimes overlooked when we're dieting and when we're trying to release weight. If you understand that when you are in protection mode, that the priority is not the gut, the priority is not the digestive system, you give yourself basically a major disadvantage to ever being able to oxidize fat. So where fat oxidizes is in the liver, it's in the digestive system. But if you're constantly in protection mode and the majority of your energy is being supplied to the muscle tissue, it's being supplied to the extremities, your body has high levels of cortisol. Well, cortisol is going to make sure that healing doesn't happen. So any inflammation in the gut that's happening from stress, that's happening from the food that we're eating, is creating a very, very difficult environment for food to be digested and broken down properly, and for the right types of nutrients to be assimilated and released and distributed in the body, as well as the breaking down of fat. So again, we'll get more into that tomorrow. It's gonna be a super interesting conversation. And just as a side note, this is a very, very passionate topic of mine because I suffered with major gut issues for a while. And it's been a few years now that I run these 21-day gut health reset challenges. They're really, really fun in the sense that we get to talk about how we can reset the gut, reduce inflammation, and then slowly start to reintroduce foods that serve us the most. And this starts to change a lot of things. It actually adjusts hormones. It helps us really understand how to shift our nervous system as well. And so this is something that if you're interested in learning more about, you can just write me on the side and just get some information about. But again, it's a very, very passionate topic of mine because I suffered with gut health for many, many years, and it took a long time to resolve it. And now I help so many people do the same. And then overnight, practically, they start to see a major transformation in the body. And why that's important is because when our gut is inflamed, right? Like when you sprain an ankle, you see a lot of inflammation, there's a lot of swelling. Well, the same thing is happening everywhere in the body. So when you have an inflamed gut, you're swollen everywhere, and the tissue has a hard time even just moving and circulating the nutrients that it needs and even removing all the toxins. And then finally, what slows down metabolism? Semaglutides. And why this is so important is because this is a new medication that is being offered as a weight loss medication. It's actually a medication for diabetes. And so many women that we've spoken to, they've had major unfortunate side effects from having taken these medications. Anything from major ulcers in the stomach to partial paralysis in the face and in the arms to a lot of issues with their liver. And this actually slows down your metabolism because it actually consumes muscle tissue. So these are medications that you would, when you start to take them to release weight, that first of all, you'd have to be on them for life for them to still be effective. It costs about $1,000 a month to be on this medication, unless you have insurance to cover it, but most people don't. And if, let's say, you did have insurance to cover it for a while and all of a sudden you lost your insurance, then you wouldn't be able to afford them anymore. You would see the weight come right back and more. And so there is no magic formula or magic pill. If you've tried this, and maybe you've already tried it, maybe you know people who've tried it, and you know about the side effects that come with it, then you know that they're very, very severe. This is a new medication and it has not been fully tested. In about 10 years, we're gonna hear about all the havoc it has created on so many people. And so if you have an opportunity to do this, I would steer away. Please remember that medication and pharmaceuticals in general are a major business. And there's a lot of people making a lot of money behind you taking something, and it's just much easier to prescribe. And I say that so respectfully because I come from a line of doctors. Both my parents were doctors and my brother's a doctor. And so I say that with so much respect, and I say that because I care about you and I care about what happens to you, and I care that in 5 years from now that you don't have these major side effects from having looked for that magic pill or that magic shot in this case. Moving on now, what speeds up metabolism? Well, like we shared, it would be the exact opposite of what we just spoke about. Resistance training, starting to add resistance training into your day-to-day activities. The type of resistance training that I recommend would be full body, and I have a lot of those workouts on my YouTube channel, Sherry Shaban Fitness. They're 5 minutes to 12 minutes long, very easy to fit in the day. I personally do 20 minutes of resistance training 5 days a week, and that's the amount of time that I make space for, and also that fits and accommodates my schedule and gives me the results that I want. And that's what the HitDex app is all about. Really short workouts, full body. You don't need a lot of equipment. They're super fun and they challenge the body. And if you're a woman listening to this, resistance training is really important, not just for speeding up metabolism and weight loss and all these things, but really avoiding osteopenia and osteoporosis long term. And generally the major injury that we see in seniors and older people, things like femur fractures and hip fractures, all from having instability. And so important. And lean body mass, muscle tissue, that really is the muscle or the tissue of longevity. And we're always looking for this, again, how do we go into anti-aging? What is going to help extend our life? Well, they've discovered that muscle tissue is that tissue of longevity. The more muscle tissue that you have, the longer you actually live. It's correlated with a longer lifespan. So just an FYI. And what else speeds up metabolism? Meals that take work to digest, right? So these are whole foods. These are complex carbohydrates. These are foods that your body has to work hard to digest. There's a lot of fiber in there. So things like beans and things like starches, so sweet potatoes and squash and a good amount of protein, foods that are actually forcing you to chew and to digest. So not just having the protein shake, but actually sitting down and chewing your food. And of course, all your leafy greens, all the things that take time to digest, and really minimizing as much as possible all your liquid meals. Even though it's easy and it tastes good in a drink and it's, goes down easily, you'll notice again, over time, is it really giving you the results that you want, or is it taking you further away? So think of the more work that you have to do, or your body rather has to do to break down that food and digest it, the more energy and calories it has to put in order to do that. And then non-purposeful exercise. So non-purposeful exercise is all the movement that you get the rest of your day. It could be walking, it could be cleaning the house, it could be doing yard work. So all of that ends up speeding up your metabolism, also without increasing those sugar cravings. And of course, shifting into safety mode, making sure that you don't have cortisol that's constantly blocking everything that you're doing, and releasing that stored trauma, that stored energy. So any trauma that's stored in the body that you're still holding on to is seen as energy. And that's why it always feels heavy. There's this constant carrying of all of these things that have happened in the past, and it's continuing to impact and block your success. Regulating insulin and regulating cortisol, these are the fat storage hormones. If you know how to manage insulin, which again, we share how to do in our program, we teach you the ways that you can regulate insulin without a monitor, without really any data, just through the foods that you eat and through the feedback of how you feel. And also cortisol. Again, cortisol is associated with protection mode. And then of course, being a fat burner, having your body actually be able to call upon fat stores when it needs it, to not feel like it needs to eat every few hours when it's actually running out of energy. So when you're a fat burner, you have a faster metabolism. Your body's actually able to be more metabolically flexible. And then of course, optimized gut health. When you don't have dysbiosis, when you don't have inflammation and everything is working properly for you, then you're going to see how quickly that magic happens. Things will be broken down quicker, and the serotonin will be released. 70 to 80% of the body's serotonin is released in the gut. It's produced in the gut, and that is the feel-good hormone. So all of this starts to affect your mood, and you start to feel a lot more stable, and also feel like doing all the things that we're just talking about. When you're feeling good, you're going to go work out. When you're feeling good, you're going to put more energy into your meals. When you're feeling good, you're going to want to go for a walk. And so it's so important to understand that we can't just isolate one little thing, but we have to see the body globally, or holistically as they call it. And so before we move on, and this is going to be an important topic because it seems like we're talking a lot about diet, and all we've been talking about, especially when we talk about metabolism, is diet, and watch your diet and make sure that you're eating this and eat more of that and don't eat this much and move and all these things. And so I want to just take a couple steps back and look at the big picture and talk about what diet is. Diet is actually anything and everything that enters your being from your environment that impacts your body, your mind, your spirit, and your thoughts and your emotions. So diet is everything that enters your being. That could be what you're eating. That could be what you're drinking. That could be what you're smelling. That could be the air quality that you're inhaling. That could be how you're breathing. That could be what you're hearing. That could be the conversations that you're sitting in. That could be your social circle, the people that you tend to spend the most time with. And that could be, of course, everything that you're getting on social media, the things that you're watching. Do they make you feel not enough? Are you constantly comparing yourself? Do you always feel like a loser while you compare yourself to other people? And that's how you feel when you're on social media. Are you always worried about the state of the world? Are you constantly watching worrying things? All of that is your diet. The moment you step away from just what you're eating and how much you're moving, and look at everything else that's entering your consciousness as part of your diet and start to manage your day in terms of energy, notice, okay, when I sit down with this person, I have high vibration energy. Like it feels really good. I feel really great. Or I sit down with this person, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. That is a reflection on your diet. Same thing with your food. When you eat something, ooh, that makes me feel light and I feel full of vitality. And that was a great, nice, sustainable meal. Or do I eat something like, oh, I'm so tired, I need to lie down for a few hours. All of that is how you monitor your diet. And that's also everything we've been talking about before. We've been telling you that if you really want to increase your metabolism, if you want to shift your hormones, you have to work on your nervous system. And this is what affects your nervous system. What you're eating affects your nervous system. If you're eating something toxic, if you're eating something harmful, whether that is an entire box of chocolate chip cookies, your body sees that as something harmful. Or you're sitting down in a conversation and somebody's saying a lot of nasty things to you. Or you're with a partner that's always making you feel like you're not enough. That's part of your diet. And so while we're having this conversation talking about metabolism, the last thing I want you to do is walk away only thinking about how you're going to change what you're eating. I want you to look at your entire diet. What else needs to be addressed? And be honest with yourself. What is your work environment like? What is your social environment like? What is your financial environment like? Is this a source of stress for you? Do you feel like you have maybe some binge behavior as well around your finances, like you do maybe around your food? All of this is part of your diet. And how you do anything is how you do everything. And so it's incredibly important that when we're having this conversation and we've been talking about hormones and we've been talking about metabolism, that you understand that everything that we're also talking about are the things that impact your emotions and your thoughts. Because remember that you are the sum of all of your habits, like who you are today. I, Sherry Shaban, today sitting here with you on July 24th at 12:51 p.m. Eastern. I am the sum of all of these things that are constantly running over and over and over again. There's certain things that trigger me in a certain way to give up a certain thought. Maybe it's rain. Maybe I can't stand rain. Maybe every single time it rains and I see that it's raining or I smell that it's raining, I get the thought, oh God, it's raining. It's going to be a terrible day. There's my thought. What is the emotion? I'm in such a bad mood. It's terrible. It's a terrible day. I hate today. Right? And what are my actions? I'm going to yell at everybody. I had a workout or a walk planned. I'm not going to go do it. Okay. Now, every time it rains, that's the habit I have. If it rains, I throw everything out the window. I'm in a bad mood. I tell everybody off. I can't stand it. I'm depressed. I'm sad. I feel terrible and I feel down, and I let go of all the self-care rituals I normally have. And then that becomes my behavior and ultimately my character. And so it's up to you to decide what you want to do in terms of addressing your diet. And like I said, you get to choose how you're going to respond to that trigger with that thought. You've matched this. That if what I just said to you resonates with you, and by the way, I hear this a lot from a lot of the people that I work with. Oh, I didn't go out today because it was raining. I was going to go for a walk or a run, but it was raining. Right? And it's just an association. Rain equals I'm going to abandon everything that I want to do. And maybe you can change that. And one of my favorite mottos when it rains, when I go outside, I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm going to go home. I'm going to change my clothes. I'm going to take a bath. Who cares? It's just water. It's just water. Thank God for the water, because you know what? Everything is green and there's foliage and there's water and there's so much abundance of it. And thank goodness, otherwise I'd be living in a desert. That's why there's water, and it has nothing to do with me. That water, that rain has nothing to do with me today. It's about the plants. It's about the environment. It's about Mother Nature. It's not about Sherry. That rain has nothing to do with Sherry. But Sherry's making it all about her today because it's raining. It ruined her day. Gosh darn it, why did you rain? Right? So think about this. You get to decide. You get to decide what your diet is, and you can make all these changes. And that's why the sum of all of your habits, which start with a trigger and a thought, is who you end up becoming. If you're that person who easily abandons their self-care rituals because something happened, it's because of the weather, it's because of somebody else, you're always blaming other people, you're always criticizing other people, you're always complaining about things not going exactly how you want it. Maybe you're a perfectionist. Maybe everything has to be exactly right for you to feel okay. And when that one little thing isn't, then all of a sudden nothing is, and then you abandon it all. Again, something I see often. So just some food for thought, pun intended, okay? And so If you really want to speed up your metabolism and you really want to make your body unstubborn, so it stops fighting you, so it gives up the craving, and so it releases the weight it's been holding on to for protection, you have to address your nervous system. Go ahead, give it a try. Let's see what happens. But until you do that, I'm telling you now, you're going to be stuck. We'll be having this conversation in 5 years and you'll still be exactly where you are. And it's not because I don't think you can do it. I actually think you can. I actually know 100% that you can do it. And that's why you're here today, because you want to do this. You're sick and tired of doing the same thing over and over again and not getting that result. And that's why you're here listening in today. But I'll tell you why it won't work. And it's not because of you. It's not because of you. It's just because you're not focused on the right thing. And our physical body is an outward reflection of our internal environment. And until you realize that, until you start working on that and you let go of all the ineffective methods, you're still going to be here in 5 years and you're still going to be here in 10 years. And again, I've seen this over and over again. And a lot of people on this call, a lot of people who've registered for this masterclass, I've been working with them for 10 years. And I shared this conversation. And at the end of the day, it is our choice what we decide. It's our choice. And sometimes we have to get to that place where we're like, all right, you know what? It's time to start something else. I need support. And I'll tell you, I have, and I'm very proud to say, I have so many coaches I work with. Why? Because they show me my blind spots. Because they call me out on my own BS and on my own stories. And because they don't let me just give up on myself. And because they show and reveal things to me that I am so unaware of. And they take me where I want to be way faster than I've ever done it on my own. And we're all in a very specialized place. And maybe your jam is finances, and maybe someone else's jam is accounting, and maybe somebody else is a lawyer. But this is my jam. And I'll tell you, I've spent 25 years perfecting this because I first started my career helping people with meal plans. And I thought that was the way to do it. And after I put myself in a binge eating behavior, I realized, whoa, if that can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. Because I should know better. In fact, I know all the things. I've studied all the things. I know about all the diets. How can it be? And you're not here to learn more about diets, and you're not here for anyone to tell you what you should or should not eat. I don't think you need me for that, and you don't need any coach for that. But what you do need is to learn how to shift your nervous system. Because the more you're in this place, and the more you have trials and errors and trials and errors over and over and over again of weight release and weight gain and weight release and weight gain, you're actually just telling yourself that this is going to be the cycle forever. You're programming your mind to believing that it's never, ever going to work for you. And again, I know you can do it, but you have to do something different. And so if you're one person to believe that there's this wagon, okay, if you use the word wagon ever around your healthcare rituals, I'm telling you right now, you're in protection mode. Because if you believe that you're either on the wagon or off the wagon, oh, it's so good, I was on the wagon, oh, I fell off the wagon. It was going so great, but then I fell off the wagon. If that's how you believe your health journey has been, I'm going to tell you now, you're in protection mode. Because once you find that stability and you know how to manage your emotions, it doesn't matter what life events happen. It doesn't matter if you're on the moon. It doesn't matter what zombie apocalypse happens. You're still going to be level and very, very consistent in all of your rituals. Nothing has to change drastically. Your rituals are not going to be dependent on what happens in life and what happens with your emotions. Those two are going to be separate. You're going to be able to manage your emotions, and you're not going to be using food or other substances to sabotage your results. And so if you have this word in your dictionary right now, in your vocabulary, and you use this over and over again, this is a great sign that you're in protection.